Okay, this should be live now, I hope. I'm checking my other source of this to make sure it's going live. Let me make sure. All right. Well, tonight I wanted to kind of do a long form going through a lot of my slides on this stuff regarding the birth of Jesus and everything that surrounded it in all the gospel accounts, harmonizing them. So it's going to go a long time, but I'm going to go through them, and then I'll make this a video kind of permanently on my page. But it's 2 days before Christmas, so I thought, let's just do it. I've got this urge to do it for some reason. So I'm going to start with this slide set. I've done it before on this channel, but like 5 years ago, so I'm just going to do it again. And then I'm going to go through my other stuff. One big, huge picture is what I wanted to do with this one. So, the Star of Bethlehem. That's where I'm going to start. Of course, this is the story where the three wise men, it doesn't say there's three, but they had three gifts. That's why we come up with, the tradition is three. But there's probably several, maybe many, that showed up bearing three types of gifts. And they followed this star. So we're going to go through the account first. Now, I'm kind of going by there it goes. All right. So start with Matthew. We're going to go through Matthew, Luke, John, everything that has something to say about the Christmas story. But I'm going to start with this, and then we'll get into the rest of it as we go. Now, it starts by, since I'm going to go over I'm not doing the birth of Jesus first, I'm doing this first, because I referenced this in some other slides, so I want to do this first. So after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the King, which is Herod the Great, so we know that he was alive at the time that this star appeared. These magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem. So what are magi? They're just professional astrologers at the time. There was a school of them. Daniel, from the book of Daniel, 500 years prior to this, he was a magi. So they could have had his writings. I think maybe they survived into their hands at that time to expect the coming of a Messiah around the time that Jesus showed up. Messiah just means anointed one. These magi, these astrologers, back then astrology and observing the skies and knowing the pattern of planets and stars that they didn't understand the difference was what they were. So you kind of mix it in with astrology, but they were the scientists of the day. The east would probably Babylon or Persia. And so they recognized something and they decide to follow this heavenly body over time that of note only they saw, the whole world wasn't seeing it or recognizing what it was. But these guys, why pick them, right? They were already at it. They're already observing the skies every night as a profession and trying to make sense of it and see if it applied to their current situations. So yeah, they would use it to predict the future or predict somehow give guidance to kings and people in powerful positions. So they were looking at it for signs. So I don't think this is anything extraordinary, but to the observer who knows what they're looking for, it did mean something. And that's why this appealed to them and no one else. So we know that the heavenly bodies are placed there for signs and seasons and lights in the heavens in Genesis. When they show up after following the star, where is he who has been born king of the Jews? So they expected to find a king of the Jews. So something about the information in the skies had told them a king was coming who was of the Jews. And they thought it was important to come find him. So somehow this thing in the sky that they were observing indicated birth, kingship, and Jewishness, or something from that side of the world. And they reported, "We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." They called it the Messiah's star. and they saw in the east, which is typical of how you observe a celestial object. When Herod the king heard this is Herod the Great. The Herodians were a group of us. I want to discuss that real quick. Who were Herods, right? They were like a vassal state of the Romans, and they were allowed to control Judea, Samaria. So Herod the Great, he was over everything. And after he died, it split into like four. There was like one person in between him and the three or four split after him. That person got deposed really quickly by the Romans, and then they kind of instituted the rest of the Herodian family. The Herod at the time of Jesus, Herod just means king, I believe. It's just a family name. But the Herod at the time of Jesus, that family name Herod, was Antipas, not the Great. Herod Antipas. At the time of Jesus' crucifixion. At the time of Jesus' birth, it was Herod the Great. At the time of his crucifixion, it was Herod Antipas. Antipas was in control of the Jerusalem area. So Herod the king was troubled. He hadn't seen the star. He just gets reported of it. So again, it's not something that the whole world could see or recognize what it meant. They could see it, but they didn't know they didn't know it was anything different than what they looked up at the sky every night and saw. So he was troubled because he's like, this means something bad for my kingdom because I'm the king of this area, put in place by the Romans. I don't want some group rising up who believes in these prophecies from the Old Testament to decide that they're king, that they have a king born that's going to take over my kingdom. And there was a messianic fervor in the days of Herod the Great. So Tacitus, in his histories, writes, most of the Jews firmly believed that their ancient priestly writings contained the prophecy that was this very time when the East should grow strong and men from Judea should possess the world. That's in Tacitus. So there was a lot of Jews that believed at this time that their ancient writings had a prophecy that something would come and Judea would rule the world. Now, of course, it's done through the gospel, but it did rule the world eventually. What happened eventually? It spread to all the nations, and the Roman Empire converted to Christianity by the 300s AD. But it just wasn't in the way the Jews expected. And this other from Suetonius, my camera here's in the way. There had been spread all over the Orient an old and established belief that it was fated to that time for men coming from Judea to rule the world. They both kind of said the same thing. And Josephus, in his Wars, Josephus was a first century Jewish writer, historian, not Christian, but wrote a lot of history. He wrote, but now what did most elevate the Jews in undertaking this war was an ambiguous oracle, probably in Daniel, that was also found in their sacred writings. How about that time one from their country should become governor of the habitable earth. The Jews took this prediction to belong to themselves in particular, and many of the wise men were thereby deceived in their determination. Remember, Josephus was a Jew, but he was writing on behalf of the Romans, so he kind of wrote down on them in a negative way. Next verse is, gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. This is Herod asking. They said to him, oh, wait a minute. They said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea. So the wise men, or the Magi, are wondering where he's to be born. And they're told, in Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means the least among the leaders of Judah. For out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel. That's Micah predicting the coming of the Messiah out of Bethlehem. That's clearly a messianic reference. So the chief priests and scribes were looking at the ancient writings and trying to tell Herod where, he's going to come out of Bethlehem. And so the Magi are kind of taking this to heart. So Herod secretly called the Magi and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. So we know that he elicited from them when it appeared exactly. He didn't know when it appeared. He had to ask about it. So again, this is not something that was obvious to him. And so he sent them to Bethlehem to go find it because he learned from the scribes and priests, that's where to go look from Micah. I don't think that the Magi had Micah. They might have had Daniel, but they didn't have Micah. Because again, Daniel was a Magi. Daniel got taken into Babylonian captivity 500 years prior and stuck into Babylon. And in Daniel 9:24 through 27, it talks about a time when the Messiah would come. And if you do the math on it, it should be right about the time that the Magi are picking up on his birth. So they just didn't know where to go looking once they got to Jerusalem. But the other prophecy in Micah told them where to look, right, in Bethlehem. So that's where they went. So he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, report it to me. So he lies and say, I too may come and worship him. He really wants to kill him. After hearing the king, they went their way, and the star, which they had seen in the east, went on before them until it stopped over the place where the child was, came and stood still. So the question is, can a star move over time? You got the background of stars in the sky that don't move, but can a star itself move day to day to day across the heavens and guide you where to go? Well, yeah. I mean, that's what the word planet means, wanderer. So to wander. So that's why planets are given the name, because when you look at them with the naked eye, they are acting differently than the other bright dots in the sky. So they look like stars, and you would call them a star if you didn't know they were planets, or you would call them a wandering star. And it's a special type of, if you just use the word star, not scientifically, but as bright white dot in the sky, then okay, they're following a bright white dot in the sky. And if we use the term star that way, which is how they would have used it, they were following a star. It happened to be a planet. So we know more now than they do then, but they were following a star that was a bright dot in the sky that moved differently than the rest of them. And that's what astrologers did. That's what Magi did every day of their life. They monitored the planets that we now know them as and tracked them and tried to obtain information from that tracking, which is what they're doing here. So what did they learn about this star? First we know Herod was alive. It signified birth, kingship, had a connection with the Jewish nation, rose in the east, appeared at a precise time. Herod didn't know when it appeared. It endured over time and was ahead of the Magi as they went south. When they went to reach Jerusalem, it was in the southern sky, and stopped over Bethlehem. So, this is what I was saying. Wandering stars, astra means star, planetes means to wander. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a wandering star. We're dealing with a planet. So, kind of said much of this already. There's, of course, accommodating language here so that the humans reading of the day, the people of the day, can actually understand what's being talked about. Certainly the heavens declare the glory of God, and the lights in the sky are for signs and seasons. And Romans, since the creation of his world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood by what is made. Okay. Let's see. Now we're going to play like we're the Magi and follow the star using astronomical software that I've put this into. You can do it yourself if you want. It's called stellarium.org. It's a free software. What's being shown in this slide set is like an older version of it, but it's even better now. One thing I want you to realize when we're putting all this into Stellarium and on the screen here is there's no year zero. So AD means Anno Domini, which is year, Anno like annual, of our Lord. Domini means Lord. AD is year of our Lord, which means his birth year. And BC before Christ. There's no year zero in the AD BC scheme. There's no year zero. It goes from 1 BC to 1 AD. So when doing numerics or doing like mathematics, you have to have a zero, especially if you go between negative to positive. So if you're going to add and subtract, you have to include a zero. So I'll show you how we'll do it. But it just means calling AD 1, 1, AD 2, 2, etc. So AD 1 is 1, 2 is 2, etc. All the way to now. BC, negative 1, was like 1 BC will be 0. numerically, and 2 BC will be -1 numerically. That's how it's going to work. And that's what I'm showing here. So 1 BC is going to be the 0 point, because 1 AD is going to stay 1, 2 AD is going to stay 2 to make it numeral. 1 BC will be 0, 2 BC will be -1, 3 BC will be -2, etc. forever. So we're going to go to Luke chapter 3 because Christ's whole life pivots around Luke 3. So it says, now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, and Herod, this is a great, was tetrarch of Galilee. Sorry, no, I got it backwards. This is Antipas, not the great. This is well after the events of what we're talking about. We're talking about the birth of Christ right now, right? This is in the middle of his life. This is toward the end of his life. So it's the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. We will show you here in a minute that the Caesar at the time of Jesus' birth is Augustus. This is Tiberius, all right? It's a different Caesar because Augustus had passed away. But this is the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, and Herod Antipas was tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip was tetrarch of the region of Iturea and Trachonitis, and Lysanus was tetrarch of Abilene. You see how after Herod the Great, the other Herods were kind of split off. They were all part of the same family, of the Herod family. In the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, the word of the Lord came to John, the son of Zacharias, in the wilderness. Jesus then stood there. So after that, Jesus was baptized, at which time Jesus himself began to be about 30 years old. So the point here is that Jesus was being baptized at 30 years old in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius. So 15th year of the reign of Tiberius equals 30 years old. So what are we going to do? We're just going to go backwards to get to to figure out what year of Tiberius Caesar he was, like, whatever the 0 year of Tiberius Caesar is, the year he was born. So Tiberius Caesar took over from Augustus after Augustus's death on August 19th of AD 14. Okay? You got AD 14, August 19th, that's when Tiberius takes over. Now, his first year doesn't start AD 14 because it's confusing. Anyone that dies in the middle of a year, to make it the same for all kings, whenever this happens, when they take over, you'll put their first year to start January 1st of the next. Here we're talking Romans, so they have the same months, right? The same months we do. So you'll put it on January 1st of the following year. So AD 15 was his first year in order to standardize it. So it's called ascension year. He ascends to power. And then his first year of reign is after it starts as a standardization on the next January 1st. So AD 15 was his first year. Since we know that AD 15 was his year 1, then his year 15 was sometime the year AD 29. So Jesus was turning 30 years old at his baptism in AD 29. That's just straight out of the text. All right? Straight out of the text. And it's just showing it. If you have year 1 starts AD 15, year 15 starts AD 29. All right? So, so Jesus was turning 30 in AD 29. So that's what we're doing. We're going backwards from when Tiberius Caesar took over, and we're figuring out what his 15th year is. So his 15th year has to be when Jesus turns 30, because that's what that said. 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, Jesus turns 30. Year 1 is AD 15. Year 15 is AD 29 of Tiberius Caesar. So that's when he turns 30 at AD 29. Now I'll go backwards. I think I got ahead of myself a few minutes ago. Now I'll go backwards from AD 29. And you go all the way back. Here, you see the pattern I'm showing. He must be turning 1 in 1 BC. He must be turning 2. He must be being born in 2 BC. All right? If you're going to convert it to numerals, that's what you do. You do 29.5. I'm going to call it June, because that's actually when I think he was born. That's why I'm putting June. I'm not pulling June out of nowhere, but that's also the middle of the year, so you could just make it a numeral because it's sometime in that year, right? So I'm just making it in the middle of the year. It just happens to be when I think he was born, but I'm making it in the middle of the year for that reason, for math. So 29.5 minus 30 years, 29.5, because I'm saying 81 is 1, so 29 is 29 and a half. Minus 30 years to get him to 0 when he was born is negative 0.5. Negative 0.5. 1 BC starts here. It goes forward. 2 BC starts here. So middle of 2 BC would be negative 0.5. He was born right around 0, right? It just happens to be middle of 2 BC. 2 BC started, it hadn't finished, negative 0.5. I hope you see that. So that's how you do the math to get to 2 BC. So now we're going to talk about the astronomy of it. This is me just showing that differently. So astronomically, it also matches to 2 BC. And this is what, when I say this is what the Magi were looking at, okay, in the sky. So they're following Jupiter. That's going to be like the king planet, all right? They're following Jupiter. So Jupiter and Venus meet up in conjunction, really close conjunction, within the constellation Leo the Lion. So you have a king planet meeting a mother planet, because Venus is always the mother and Jupiter is always the king. I don't care what you call those names of those entities, those things. They thought they were entities. They thought they were gods, right? They thought these things that moved differently than the rest of the stars were different. They didn't know what to call them, so they worshipped them, or they assigned gods to them. And so Jupiter it was always perceived as the king planet. So no matter what you call it throughout history, it always means king, no matter what culture. So here in the Roman time, in our time, it's Jupiter. And then Venus is always a female type goddess. So king planet means mother planet. So in my opinion, this is God, Jupiter, announcing his intention to approach Mary, who will conceive via the Holy Spirit. That's what's happening here. It's an announcement. It's not the actual event. It's an announcement. It's going to happen. And I'll show you why. This is how they know he's king of the Jews, because Leo the Lion. So out of the tribe of Judah comes the king of Israel. And Jesus is of the tribe of Judah, because both Joseph and Mary come from the tribe of Judah. All right. So this is like I took a shot off the Stellarium software from. Let me make sure. Yeah, this is where they're coming from. So it is Babylon. I think I made it Baghdad somewhere in here. You look down here at the bottom. I don't know if it's showing up on the screen online, but at the bottom it shows Baghdad. So I set it to go to Baghdad on the software. And these are so close together you can't really see them because they're so conjuncted so closely. So that's anytime two heavenly bodies can come so close to each other, it's called a conjunction. It can be not that close and still be a conjunction, but this is like right on top of each other. So that's quite significant to a Magi, right? And this is as if we're back in time looking at it. I'm looking at it. I'm on August 12th of 3 BC. That's when this happened. So I just told the Stellarium software to show me what the sky looked like from Babylon in 3 BC on August 12th. This is at 4:25 in the morning, and that's what they saw. I'm attaching the verse to it, to what they were seeing in real time, in real life, reproduced by science. On Saturday, August 31st, 3 BC, Mercury, which is always a messenger. What's an angel but a messenger of God giving a message to the receiver? Mercury, the messenger, is involved in a conjunction with Venus, the mother. Okay? That's happening as the next event, the second event. August 12th, August 31st, all in 3 BC. It's just progressing through time now. It occurred in Leo the Lion. So these planets, they move across. If you just go out every night and you watch the sky, You can find Jupiter, you can find these planets, and you can watch them every night at the same time. Just go out the same time and watch them. They're not in the same place every time, but the rest of the background stars are in the same place. Or they're so imperceptibly moving, you don't pick up on it, but you definitely pick up on these planets, which are closer in our solar system and going around the sun, and they're going at a different speed than us. So sometimes they'll go each night a little farther one way, a little farther in the sky, and then suddenly they'll start going backwards because we kind of overlap in our orbit. We're going to go a little faster, so now we're going the other way, and they look like they're going backwards. So that's called retrograde motion of these planets, which I'm going to show happens with what they see, but that's a normal phenomenon. That's just going to happen because we're on a track around the sun, and so is Jupiter way out here, and we're really close. So sometimes it looks like it's going backwards and forwards across the night sky, but you'll see it happen if you were to pay attention. I think we have this Mercury messenger planet conjuncting with Venus as indicating this visitation of the angel in the 6th month of it's the 6th month of John the Baptist's mother's pregnancy with John the Baptist, but it's also the 6th month is the first month of the religious calendar. So it's also Elizabeth's 6 months of pregnancy. I believe, and I'm going to show here in a little bit why, when we get to it in the text, that John the Baptist was probably conceived in the month of Nisan. And there's debate on this. I'm going to show you why I think it. But to move onward, so I do believe that it's both the 6th month of her pregnancy and the 6th month of which is August, September would be the 6th month of the calendar as well. Then the 6th month. So that's when this visitation happened. So here's the picture of it. So you've got Jupiter up here, but you got Mercury and Venus. So this is Mercury the messenger conjuncting with Venus the mother. That's what we're talking about. Jupiter's not involved, but it's still up here in Leo the Lion. That's the other thing I need to show. Make sure you see it. Leo the Lion is this constellation. Leo the Lion. So this is Jupiter up here, and Mercury and Venus are conjuncting together, right on top of each other again. The other thing is, like, when these things conjunct, they're often not this close, but 2 in a row are very close on top. It's pretty incredible how close they are back to back. See, back to back, they're really close. So that's the angel appearing. I believe this is the angel appearing to, at least signifying it for probably the date that it happened. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. Why it's even more likely in a minute. But that's probably the date it happened. 3 BC is when the angel Gabriel visited Mary. But what did he visit? He said, you're going to be with child. And Wednesday, September 11th of 3 BC. So the previous day, the September 10th of 3 BC, was the Jewish New Year. It was Tishri 1. That was September 10th of 3 BC. It's the first day of Rosh Hashanah. All right, it's the civil year. They have 2 calendars, the Jewish calendars. They have the religious and the civil. The civil is this one, Tishri. It's in their September, October of us. And then the religious is Nisan, which is the Passover month. So you should remember those as best you can. Tishri and Nisan. Tishri's the civil, Nisan's the religious, the 2 first months of the calendars. So here, the Virgo, the Virgin, is seen rising in the east, coming in behind Leo the Lion, and she's rising with the sun in her womb, literally within her womb, and a crescent moon at her foot. And this correlates to the conception, I believe, because the sun is in her womb in this. And Revelation, I know it's a reference, people don't think it's about this, but it is a direct reference to this phenomenon. And it happens every year. But in the context of what we just saw, the conjunctions don't happen this close every year, if at all. But as close as they happened, and now it starts to build a pattern. Any one of these is not the big deal. But multiple in a row, over and over and over again, I'm about to show, all these signs is going to make a magi go, that means something. Because that's what they did all the time anyway. They made connections. You may think it's a silly connection, but a magi wouldn't. And really, it is not a very common connection at all. It's like 1 in a million for this all to happen throughout a 9-month period. But anyway, you'll see. So in Revelation 12:1, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars, and she was with child. She's not giving birth there. It says she was with, like within. That's conception, not birth. So on September 11th, Tishri Rosh Hashanah, I believe that's his conception in 3 BC. That's what we're seeing. In the womb, you have the sun in the womb of Virgo the Virgin. That's a constellation. Virgo the Virgin is a constellation. And it comes in behind Leo the Lion. That's Leo the Lion up here. This is Virgo the Virgin coming in behind it. This is signifying conception. So September 10th, 11th is when he was conceived. And you can actually tease out stars around her head. The brightest, a total 12. And that's what kind of 12 stars means. And there is a moon under her feet. It's right here. And it's like a sliver. There's a sliver of a moon there. There's a crescent moon under her feet. Okay, September 14th. Now, Jupiter forms a close conjunction right on top of the star Regulus. This is in Leo the Lion. So Regulus means king star. Means it's called by the Romans Rex. And the Babylonians call it Sharu, this star within Leo. And both of which mean king. You have this king planet, master of the planets, master of the world, the universe, Jupiter. Coming close to another king star, a subordinate, but a king, coming close, which is Regulus. All right? And I say subordinate because, Christ defers to the Father. This is the Father and the Son making contact here, or symbolizing that. So right on top of it, you got Jupiter and the star Regulus right there, just at the front part of the animal, of the Leo the Lion. So that's on September 14th. All right. The next one's a few months later. So that's September 14th. Now it's February 17th. Jupiter has gone through the sky and then turned around. That's what I was talking about before. That's retrograde motion. I can't click on that because of the way I have this up. But there's a visual of why you have retrograde motion. But either way, it comes back and meets it again right here. I think I messed it up. Got to get off it. There. So here it is meeting again. Now you see it's kind of flipped in the sky as well. It flipped to the west because it's later in the season. So now this is going west. So before this was east. I don't know if I show it very well. But it's facing it. See, there's an E there. That's east. And this is west. This is west. February 17th is west. Even here it was east. September 14th. Now it's flipped west. That means go west. They were in the east. The kings, the Magi were in the east. And they got to go west. The thing turns to the west. Okay? In the second conjunction, this with Regulus. So there it is again. Going west. Thursday, May 8th of 2 BC. So yet again in this retrograde motion of Jupiter makes a third conjunction with the star Regulus. And that's 3. So 3, it happens to correspond with 3 trimesters. It happens to correspond with the idea of a trinity, 3. And it happens to, and 3 is like completion. It's like 1, 2, and we get it a third time. Now we know it's for real. It's like, game of chance. If you get it 3 times, then it's like no joke. I'm getting a strong message. So that's kind of what's being signaled here. It happened 3 times throughout 3 trimesters. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. This reflects to me, I think, in Daniel 7, one like a son of man was coming. He came up to the Ancient of Days. The Son of Man is the small star. Ancient of Days is the big one. and was presented before him. He was given a dominion and glory and a kingdom. This is Daniel 7, predicting the coming of the Messiah and the messianic figure, Son of Man, which Jesus called himself all the time. He said he was the Son of Man, and he said he was the Son of God. He's both fully man and fully God. That's why he called himself that. He's by nature man, and by nature God. Son of Man means by nature I'm man, and Son of God means by nature I'm God. That's why he was called Son of God. You don't take it hyper literally that God had a physical relationship with a woman and birthed a son. That's not the point. It's a metaphor. It's just like saying Son of Man. It's a reference to nature, not literal. I think literal, but it's still the nature is there of being God and being man at the same time. And it says God. Anytime Paul's talking about God, he's meaning Father. Just the way his vernacular is. So the Father highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every name. So Christ is in the Trinity. He's always the subjected one, always the one that is humble and takes the role of that eternally. That's why God can be both worshipped and full and humble at the same time. The only God that can do that is one who has those two different natures within him. He receives all glory and defers all glory to the Son at the same time. The Son takes the glory from the Father but doesn't ask for it and doesn't and gives it back to the Father. So within them, there's no pride. So God highly exalted him, bestowed on him the name which is above every name. So at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow. For Jesus to get this name above every name, it's the name above every, including God himself, because he is God. So he's exalted. So one to the other gives back to each other. So there's no pride within the Godhead. May 8th so that's the 7th one, okay? I just said, they're just showing that again. So if he was conceived on September 10th of 3 BC, like I was showing, then, like I said, September 14th does fall in the first trimester. February 17th does fall in the second. And now we're in 2 BC of May, falling within the third. I don't think that's lost on the Magi. I think they're picking up on birth. That's why we already got kingship, right? I said they picked up on birth, kingship, and Jewish. They picked up on kingship already because of Jupiter and Regulus now, 2 kings. And they picking up on birth now, and they picked up on Judah, because of the lion, and so Jew. And so they're making a connection here. It's starting to make sense because they're seeing all these things happen and these amazing conjunctions, which they're not used to seeing all in 1 year. They know it's, they might not know the statistics on it, but they know it's special. So then on Tuesday, June 17th, guess what happens again? This thing happens. That's June 16th. I have to show June 16th because you can't tell it. That's how close they are on June 17th. You would think I'm just showing Jupiter. If I just showed it like this, you would just think I'm showing Jupiter. But I'm showing June 16th to 17th. It's coming right on top. So that was like right on top. Bam! That is a bright light in the sky. That's bright. That's the star. It's the 2 in 1. Venus, planet, Jupiter, planet on top of each other. That's saying the woman has given birth because of the miracle of God. The virgin has given birth because of the miracle of God. That's what it's saying. That's the message. That's Tuesday, June 17th, 2 BC. I really think that's the date he was born. I really do. I think that's why he's being baptized when he's turning 30 in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar in 29 AD. And would you be baptized in winter? It's still cold over there in winter right now. Would you be baptized then or close to winter in a cold water? I think you would get baptized in the middle of summer. So that's what happened. That's what was going on in that verse in Luke 3 that I read out. So there's that perfect conjunction. So that's what they saw in the sky, this bright light. The other thing I wanted to show is that a gestational period, which goes from fertilization to labor, lasts for 280 days. That's like the medical way to describe gestational period. Fertilization to labor. I know sometimes people do like a mathematics from the last period. The gestational period, where you get the 280 days, is from fertilization to labor. That's the definition. It's not we're not referencing the subtracting from the time of the period. But if you take Tuesday the 10th of September, which was when, by the morning of September 11th, you see the evidence that it happened. That was the Virgo, the Virgin that I showed with the sun in the womb. That event was September 11th in the morning. September 10th was the night when he was conceived. That has a Julian day number, and you can get those from this thing. You can go to this link. It has a Julian day number. And then so does, you always report this stuff in Julian days, even now, off a Julian calendar. So the Julian day number is that, and you subtract June 17th, that number from the June 17th one. As you can see, I did, and that's 280 days exactly. So that's a gestational period. That's a message to us now. So I'm the first one I ever knew to run these numbers. I was like, this was like 10, 15 years ago when I did this. I'm like, you know what? What if I run the numbers? What if it was to be 280 days? Was my hypothesis. I told myself, if it's 280 days, I'll never not believe this. You'll never be able to force me to give up Christianity if I find that it's 280 days between September 10th and June 17th. So I just ran it, and 280 days it was. So that's telling you something. All right. And so if you add, now, so there's a lot of reasons that we know Jesus died in his 34th year without reaching 34. He turned 33. He's living out his 34th year, and then he gets crucified before he hits 34, before he finishes the 34th year. So he died roughly 33 and a half years into his life. Okay? Roughly. If you go back to minus 0.5, it adds up to 33 AD. So if he's born minus 0.5, you add 33 and a half years of life to that. He dies in 33 AD. We do know for a fact that in 33 AD, Passover was on a Friday. And we know he was crucified on a Friday. They had to pull him off the cross before the Sabbath, which started 6 p.m. Friday night. Because in the Semitic world, the day starts when the sun goes down. So that's Saturday, when the sun goes down. That he get his body off the cross before Friday at 6 p.m. when the sun went down. So he had to be crucified on a Friday. In Nisan 14, that's the day of the Passover. It's always Nisan 14. In 33 AD, Nisan 14 is a Friday, April 3rd on the Julian calendar. So that helps a lot. Then what about December 25th? So December 25th is important. So we're told that the Magi, they finally arrive, the star stands still over the house. And when they arrive, Jesus is no longer a newborn, because in the Greek, the newborn word is brephos. He's rather a child. He calls him a child, paidion, which is not a newborn. It's like a child older than a newborn. It could be anywhere in childhood, but he wasn't a newborn. So they didn't show up the day he was born. They showed up. It took him a while to get there. Okay, so he's probably about 6-month-old. That's probably what happened, and that's when it stopped. It actually stopped around December 25th. If you just kind of follow this thing logically. So, and they brought their gifts and everything, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So I'm going to show that on November 11th of 2 BC. So we got to June 17th of 2 BC. I'm going to say they see this and they're like, whoa, we're supposed to go west. Let's start packing up. So they start packing up. I don't know when they actually left, but they started leaving at some point. And they have a long way to go. So it's going to take them a month or two. It's going to take them a while to get there. By the time they arrive, it's approaching December. And so that kind of makes sense to me. And then this thing stops. So this constellation is now Virgo the Virgin. And Jupiter's kind of at the elbow. I'm putting her arm way up in the sky like that. The Jupiter's kind of at the elbow. And then it's coming down toward the shoulder on December 25th, and it goes back up by January 25th. So my point is, it's retrograde. It stops and retrogrades back. Coming down, stops, retrogrades back. So right around the 25th, it's kind of the average between the two. And that's how it looks if you just were to run it yourself in the program. So that also corresponds to why December 25th is celebrated, having nothing to do with paganism. Now, I want to talk about Herod the Great. Because if you look it up, he died in 4 BC, supposedly. But I'm going to show you where that comes from, and there's a lot of historians now. I wouldn't say a majority, but there's a lot that think he died in 1 BC. And I'm going to show why. So I want to find my slides on that. These are slides I made over time. I'm just kind of going through them all in this one session. So why did he die in 1 BC and not 4 BC? Because if he died in 1 BC, it matches with everything I'm saying. So first, I like this little picture. It's just what I talked about, which is why I wanted to do that stuff first. I've got his conception. This is Jupiter and Venus, Mercury, Venus, conception, Jupiter Regulus 1, Jupiter Regulus 2, Jupiter Regulus 3, Jupiter Venus, again, announcement, angelic announcement. This is, announcement to Magi. Hey, start looking. Angelic announcement of the coming of the Messiah to be born to Mary. Conception, trimester, two kings, 3. Jupiter, Venus, conjunction, birth. Jupiter stops on December 25th, and there's an eclipse, which I'm about to get to in a minute. Jupiter stops over the house. All right. You subtract this date from this date in the calendar using Julian day numbers, and you get 280 days. That is a pregnancy, a gestational period. Though that's what's going on. I still can't talk myself out of it. Well, that's another reason I keep doing this every year. Can I talk myself out of it? I can't. Can't do it. If you think, so what about this eclipse? This eclipse here. What about it? All right. People that say, well, so the idea of an eclipse, the whole reason we know anything about Herod, when he was born, when he did anything, comes from one guy, Josephus. He's the Jewish writer from the 1st century AD that we get a lot of information from historically. He's not a Christian. He's not even a religious anything. He's just a sellout. He's a sellout to the Romans. That's what he was. And he writes on behalf of the Romans. He's doing their history. So he makes a point to record that a lunar eclipse took place a few weeks before the death of King Herod. So if you're gonna have Herod dying in 4 BC and you're gonna trust, if you're gonna have Herod dying in 4 BC or 1 BC, you're getting it from Josephus. If you don't trust him here, you don't trust him anywhere. So why are you even coming up with a date for Herod anyway? If you're gonna come up with a date for Herod, you got to get it from Josephus. You got to believe something he said. All right. So, and if you don't believe anything he said, then just believe the Bible. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? So we got to go with what he said. That's just historians do, right? So partial eclipse in March 13th of 4 BC is all you got. I swear to God, this is what it looks like. Is that, who would look at that and say, that's why you're dying? That eclipse just happened. It was this little piece of, that's as far as it got. If you run it, you can't get it any more than that. It's a little partial eclipse at 3 a.m, low on the horizon too. All right. No one, if they noticed it, I don't think they would make much of it. Then you've got a better one in January 10th of 1 BC. And if I can show you that Herod died in 1 BC historically, this has to be the one. And it was a total eclipse, without a doubt. And it's much more likely just from the way it looks. You can't even see it well because it's all red. And that's 1:30 in the morning. They would have definitely seen that. It's higher in the sky. You're going to see it more clearly. So that is the eclipse we're talking about, in my opinion. All right. Again, it's a stellarium software. You can run it yourself. You can see when all this stuff happened in the night sky from Jerusalem. You got to be in Jerusalem here. That's where I was, Jerusalem. So that's what that is. Now that alone, I think, seals it. But let's look at what Josephus wrote and show why one group of people think one thing and one the other. It comes out of this one stuff, okay? Sometimes I get tripped up, but I think I got it down. I'll correct myself if I don't. If I say something silly. I've had this slide twice, kind of, so I'm going to start this one. Without a doubt, Josephus says two conflicting things because he's a human being. Okay, he made a mistake. If you go since they conflict, you pick one, it's 4 BC. You pick the other, it's 1 BC, and I swear it's 50-50. But I'm going to show you why I think it leans one way historically, and it matches it just happens to match with the Bible. So he says that Herod, with the help of the Roman general Sosius, besieged Jerusalem and took it. So he took it from the Jewish people after 5 or 6 months of a siege. And he says, this happened when Herod took over Jerusalem. It happened when Marcus Agrippa and Caninius Gallus were consuls at Rome. On the 185th Olympiad, on the 3rd month. Look at all he said. These two guys were consuls. It was the 185th Olympiad and the 3rd month. Okay? Later on, he's going to say it's a sabbatic year. He says those 4 things. Okay? The consular date of Agrippa with Gallo is 37 BC. An Olympiad, it's like Olympics every 4 years. Olympiad is a 4-year cycle, period. It's a 4 years period. So year 4 was 37 BC. And that was the 108. That was the 185th Olympiad. 185th Olympiad. The one where these two were at the same time was only 1 year, and it was the 4th year of it that had to be 37 BC. That's the only year they were together. And I have this over here, right here. Look at it. This tells you, I don't know how I found this thing, but it shows all the consular guys, the consuls of Rome, and the year they were in. So, in 37 BC, I'm having a hard time seeing it. In 37 BC, Agrippa, Marcus Agrippa, and Caninius Gallus were together. Only that year. See what I'm saying? That's historical data. All right. And that 3rd month was in September. Okay? I want to make this clear because it says it's the 3rd month. In that year, 37 BC, the 3rd month was September. And an Olympiad year starts in July. July, August, September. July, August, September. The 3rd month. Okay? All right. But this cannot be true if what Josephus says here is true. He said, the year in which Herod conquered Jerusalem was both a sabbatic year and a year in which Tishri 10 fell in September. Because he said it was, he connected it to Tishri 10. On the solemnity of the fast, as if a periodic, he says, just like this calamity that befell the Jews under Pompey, they were taken by him on the same day. And the Jews were taken under Pompey on Tishri 10. And he says the Jews were taken by Herod on Tishri 10. He was making a connection between that and Tishri 10. The problem is that Tishri 10 in 37 BC, which he just says, these two guys are together, and the only year they're together is 37 BC. And in that year, the 3rd month was September. I'm going to show you this in a second. The problem is it was October, like if you actually do the math on it. In 37 BC, Tishri 10 was in October, not the 3rd, but the 4th month. That's not the 3rd, that's the 4th month. Okay? So I'm going to show you that over here, if I can find it. All right, this is it. This is another website I use for this stuff. Okay? The Roman year 37 BC has Tishri 10. Ask me where my camera is. Tishri 10. See, I'm over here. This is the Hebrew and the Roman of the same year. The Hebrew years, they count them differently. So Romans 37 BC, Tishri 10 is here, which translates to 5 of October. Okay? That's a fact. That's not the 3rd month, that's the 4th month. He got something wrong, right? Something's wrong in there. Which is it? Was it 37 BC when Agrippa and Gallus were consuls, but the Day of Atonement fell in the 4th month? Or was it 36 BC when the Day of Atonement did fall in the 3rd month of the Olympiad? Because it did here. Let me show you that. Got ahead of myself. In 36 BC, Tishri 10 here falls September 24th. That is the 3rd month of the year, of the Olympiad year. Okay? It's still in the same Olympiad. It's just a different year. It's the year before, so it's the 3rd year of the Olympiad. Either scenario, it's the 185th Olympiad. But it's... do I have this in here right? I think I screwed it up. I think it should be fixing it on the fly. I think it should be 3rd year. 3rd. Yeah. So it's the Olympiad's 3rd year, when 36 BC. So which one is it? Is it when they're consuls or when they're not? That's the only thing. So in my opinion, I think he, as a Jewish person, he got the consuls wrong. And I think he didn't connect it, but he strongly remembered that this thing happened on the 10th of Tishri. So that made a connection in his mind. That was probably the true connection. So he probably was off a year. But when you're off a year, you could be off 2, because it could be the end of one year and the beginning of the other. So that gives you a gap of 2 years to work with. So from 4 BC to 1 BC, it's the beginning of 4 BC versus the end of 1 BC. You were within a 2.5 year period there, potentially. So that's what I'm going to show happens here. So if you go 36 BC, it actually works out. I'm going to show that now. I know it's complicated, but I want to go over this because I have to prove that Herod died in 1 BC. And Herod died not long after 1 BC. It was almost 2 BC when he died. He died sometime in the first 2 or 3 months of 1 BC. That's important. So Josephus, I told you, mentioned Pompey's taking of Jerusalem, which he said was 27 years removed from the capture of Jerusalem by Herod, which he says in this right here. This was 27 years' time. Okay? We know for other corroborating historical data, again, there's no corroborating historical data. There's just what Josephus says about Herod. But this other stuff corroborates elsewhere. And so they know it's in 63 BC for a lot of reasons that Pompey took Jerusalem that year. When you subtract 27 years from it, that lines up with 36 BC. As does the idea of a Day of Atonement, Tishri 10. I don't think I made it clear. On the solemnity of the fast is the Day of Atonement, which is Tishri 10. So that's how it connects to 36. You got to have it in the 3rd month. So you put it in 36 BC. It is on the 3rd month, and it is the Day of Atonement. The only thing it's not is these guys. And he got that messed up because he didn't know this guy's calendar as well. Because he's Jewish and not Roman. However much he wanted to be Roman. He wasn't. That also matches. So that's when he took Jerusalem. Then we take this from Josephus, Antiquities. Having reigned, since he had procured Antigonus to be slain, 34 years, 37, but since he had been declared king by the Romans, 37 years. That's how long he reigned from this time of the killing of Antigonus. So Antigonus was the last Hasmonean king of Judea, who had to be immediately slain once Herod conquered Jerusalem. So you had the Hasmonean dynasty, and they were in control of Judea, and Herod takes them over. He gets Antigonus and he kills him. That's what we're talking about. This whole event was when he took him over in September 24th of 36 BC. He takes it over, and he has to kill the guy that was in charge, which is this guy. He was either beheaded or crucified. One account says this guy was beheaded. One account says this guy was crucified. But anyway, he was killed by Herod the Great when he took over in 36 BC, as I just showed. And he did it in September. And we know that this guy was killed in the October. It's another thing. He was killed soon thereafter in October, which would have been the 4th month of the Olympiad. They had to take it over in the 3rd month. Another reason that it should be the third month, only way it can be the third month and Tishri 10 is 36 BC. Hope you're seeing it. As such, he said it was 34 years from 36 BC, as we just said. 34 years from being slain is how long his kingdom lasted. 36 BC plus 34 years. I mean, you can do math. October 2 BC to October 1 BC, somewhere in that, between October, it's from October. This happened in October is when he killed him. October. So sometime between October of 2 BC and October 1 BC, he died. To me, that's a fact. And the only reason 4 BC remains is because somebody thought it, who didn't look at it closely, and things get stuck in historical books for a while until enough people challenge it. There's a lot of people challenging it based on what I just showed you. So there is challenge out there in the literature. So I don't think there's a doubt that he actually died in 1 BC. So there's a couple other reasons, but basically the earliest copies of Josephus match this, and later copies saw that it didn't match, and they changed it to the 20th. This thing about the 20th year, they made it from the 20th. It should have been the 22nd year. They post-medieval type copies of Josephus, they changed it to the 20th year to make it match the Agrippa Gallus thing, 37 BC. They had to make it match, so the guy did it in a later, but he shouldn't have. It should have stayed the way it was, the 22nd year, which is what I'm showing here. The most important data is what I already showed you. But I do like the fact that the most ancient manuscripts of Josephus back up what I'm saying in this other part, which I'm not going to get into. But you can just read it, pause it and read it. You see, Josephus re-examined. There's people out there looking at this again. All right, that's what I wanted to say. And then Josephus in his Antiquities here say Josephus does not assign what's obviously going on here. So the Magi show up. They tell him a king's been born here in Bethlehem. When are they showing up? Around December. That's when they're showing up. Because I told you they left in around sometime summertime or late summer. And they show up around December, give their gifts, and book it out of town. At which time Herod is planning the killing of all the babies. So he's like, okay, they told me this period. Let me go back. They show up here, December 25th. That's when the Magi are showing up, telling Herod, spilling the beans on Herod, okay? And so he's like, dang it. He got born sometime, I know this could be, he could have been born in June, but he also could have been born, they could be off a little bit. So whenever this stuff started, that they started observing, he could have been born anywhere in that time frame as far as Herod's concerned. So he kills every kid 2 years and less because he covers the past year. He covers all the way to the beginning of 3 BC. So if your kid's 2 years old or less, he's getting killed by Herod. Herod kills a ton of children, of young boys, 2 years and less. He kills a ton of them, okay? At which time the angel appears to Mary and Joseph and says, y'all need to go to Egypt. They go to Egypt and they hide. After this guy kills them, look how close that is, too. Look at that. December 25th is when it stops and they show up. They leave. He starts getting together, killing. So he's got some killing going on within a week of December 25th of those babies. He starts killing them. 10 days later, an eclipse happens. After which, he starts to fall apart. Okay? This is from there. Illness hits him. His body putrefied and bred worms. So he probably had a necrotic gut for something. Maybe he had a bad infection or bad inflammation, a colitis of some sort. Or maybe he had an infarction of his bowel. You can have a stroke of your brain. You can have a stroke of your bowel too. Same phenomenon. He could have a stroke in his bowel. And it started to become necrotic and die. And that's a long, prolonged death when you don't have medicine to deal with it. It's not just going to kill you overnight. It's going to slowly kill you. So he traveled beyond Jordan to mineral baths and returned to Jericho when these failed to provide a cure. This is all recorded by Josephus here. I'm just bullet pointing it. Josephus is the one that words it this way. He had important men compelled to come from across the nation. They were shut up in the hippodrome, and if he died, he wanted them killed because he wanted there to be mourning in the land when he died, and maybe were afraid that some of those guys would try to take it over from his kids. So he had a bunch of people. He was anticipating his death and had people brought in to kill him if he died, and he's pretty sure he was going to die. So all these guys knew that if he died, they were going to die, and they're hoping he didn't. Could you imagine being one of those dudes? I would want to be a guy in power back then, because I'm going to have a target on my back. Herod's son Antipater was executed. Herod changed his will and himself died 5 days later. A big funeral happens. This guy mourned for 7 days. Granted many petitions. A sedition was raised, and then the Passover happened. So, that's a lot going on, and there's not that much time for it to happen if it's 4 BC, because in 4 BC it was like March when the eclipse happened, and then by April, like 3 weeks later, you had the eclipse. But, or not that. 3 weeks later, you had Passover. So the eclipse happened in March of 4 BC, and 3 weeks later, you had the Passover. So why in 4 BC would you see that happen, and then the angel says, go to Egypt for 3 weeks, and then come back? It doesn't make sense to go all the way to Egypt for just 3 weeks. It takes 3 weeks to get there. So probably it's another reason. It's probably January, just after December, really. The angel said, get out. So December 25th, he's about to kill. Angel says, get out, go to Egypt. He goes to Egypt. They stay there until after April-May range. That makes way more sense as well. The instructions to go to Egypt in the biblical account, which we're going to go over here in a second. So that's what I was talking about there. This is what I was talking about. The Magi got a message to not to return to Herod and give too much more away, and they took off too via a dream. And this is where an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, says, get up, take the child, and go back. So that's when they went back. They went to Egypt, arriving probably 2-3 weeks later. Then once he died, as of March of 1 BC, they were told to go back. So I want to read through this. At which time, so Joseph got back up, took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. After returning to Israel, Joseph was not happy hearing that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod. So after being warned by God in a dream, he left for the regions of Galilee and came and lived in a city called Nazareth. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene. He didn't like the fact that Archelaus, this guy, he didn't like him. He was worried about him. So that's the whole reason they ended up in Nazareth. Because they were from Galilee, which was by the Sea of Galilee. They're from Galilee. But he ends up raising him in Nazareth to get away from... The Galilee was where Archelaus was in control. He was reigning over Judea. So he was over Galilee. So Josephus got out of there. Everything makes sense and is explained by the history that was going on at the time, and there's logic behind it. So this is what I was going over there. Now, there's these early church fathers. Irenaeus in 180 AD, he places Jesus' birth in the 44th year of the reign of Emperor Augustus. That correlates to 3 to 2 BC. All right? There's a guy who puts it in 3 to 2 BC, an early church father, 180 AD. Clement of Alexander, 194 AD, places Jesus' birth 194 years prior to the death of Emperor Commodius. So that puts Jesus' birth in 2 BC. Clement puts it in 2 BC. Irenaeus puts it in 3 to 2 BC. Eusebius puts it in 2 BC. In the 42nd year of the reign of Augustus, the 20th year after the death of Cleopatra. So, there's historical accounts from the early church fathers dating to a time closer to the source material that also put him in 2 BC. So Herod had to die in 1 BC. I wanted that to be discussed. What's next? We're going to keep going. I'm not stopping until I get through all this. So I'm going to do a harmony of all the Gospels on the birth and the pre-incarnate Christ, because I start with John 1. So we're going to talk about all that, okay? So we're going to, now we started with the wise man. I'm going to go back to his birth, okay? In the beginning was the Word. This is before his birth. You can't leave out John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Even the Qu'ran calls Jesus a word from Allah. I just want to bring that up because it gets it out of this, but it denies that he was God in the Quran. But in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. And when God is used by the Gospel writers and the New Testament writers, they're thinking Father when they write that word. So this is the Godhead. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, the Father. All things came into being through who? Him? The primary person here is the Word. That's the discussion here. And what he was with respect to the Father, that's the discussion. All things came into being through the Word. Well, because the Word was spoken. Think of Genesis 1. God said, let it be, and it was. To let it be, and he spoke it into existence. The speaking of it into existence was the Word. Christ was the Word. Jesus was the Word that proceeded from the mouth of God. He was therefore God. He's the same nature. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten God, God, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has explained him, because he's a word. Words explain things, their language. Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, is how he worded it in the Gospels. He is explaining who God is by you're looking at God in the flesh when you see Jesus. That's why he's the Word. He is the Word, because he is the communication of God to the earth, physically, in persona, in personhood. That's the meaning of the Word. So to include that in any other source, you can't strip the meaning of what calling him the Word is, and then take away that meaning. Don't even put it. Don't even reference him being the Word if you're going to strip the whole meaning of it out of it. Because the person that came up with this was the New Testament. So that's my opinion on that matter. The Greek word for only begotten, because it mentions only begotten God. This makes sense when you understand the word. We think beget means to have birth or whatever. The actual word is monogenes or monogeneo. Geneo. Mono means one or singular. Geneo means of a kind, like genetic, or more like genus and species. Genus. So that's like a kind, right? So it's one of a kind. It's just a special. So it doesn't mean to generate or be born. So what's it saying here? Jesus is the one unique, exalted of God. He's a special son of God. So there's this concept in the Old Testament of sons of God, and the sons of God are these angelic beings. I wouldn't call them angels. Angels is a function of it's a function or a job of a son of God, but it's not what they are. What they are is Elohim, and they're called B'nai Elohim, sons of God, in Genesis 6 and even in Psalm 82 and Psalm 89. All these things are referred to, and so Jesus is above them, because Hebrews, knowing all this in the book of Hebrews chapter 1, is talking about how Jesus is above the angels. He's the only begotten, meaning one of a kind son of God. One of a kind, begotten God. The one of a kind God is what he is in the bosom. He's a kind that you're not familiar with, but he's still God. He is a special thing that is now revealed to the world in the Son being born. That's what's going on here. That's why he calls him the only begotten God from the Father, now here explaining who God is. Other verses to support this, Philippians 2:6, Jesus Christ, the form of God, where form equals morphe. Morphe means the thing that strikes the vision of the thing. So when I look at the thing, the microphone, I look at the microphone. I describe what I'm seeing. And when I describe it in words, you think, oh, that's a microphone. Yeah, it's like got a stand, and it's got like a black thing on top, and it's kind of a big black thing. It's kind of soft, spongy material. Oh, that's a microphone. That's what he's doing. He is the microphone of God. He's standing there, and he's like explaining him. So what you see reflecting off him is God. That's what Paul's trying to say here by using the word morphe. He who has seen me, he's seen the Father, John 14:9. He is the image of the invisible God, Colossians 1:15. Even the firstborn of creation. He's first to inherit. Because I told you, in the Trinity, he's subject. He's subordinate to the Father, always and forever, and gives him glory. And the Father bestows it back on him and lifts him up and puts him over all things. That's how you avoid pride within the Godhead. And so that's how we become fellow heirs with Christ in Romans 8:17. We receive his inheritance. He has inheritance as a firstborn, not as in birth, but as in the place of a firstborn son. It's a metaphor. Firstborn sons get the primary, and the secondborn comes along after. We're the secondborn. But we receive our inheritance from the firstborn, who received it from the Father. Those are some of the word plays that are going on to communicate something greater than just anything literal. All right, now we're going to go through the genealogies, which is kind of important. I'm not going to go through like all the little controversies, but once I show you the general way to look at it, it becomes clear how to interpret this as well. So people always cite some subtle differences between Matthew and Luke's genealogies of Jesus. So this is Matthew. So Matthew traces it from Abraham, okay? And he's tracing Abraham. It's like remember Matthew's audience is a Jewish audience and they like numerology. So he's got numerology going on here. And so he's going to show 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. He's going to intentionally leave out a few names so he can have the 14, 14, 14. He's not denying that those names are in there. He's just like, I can define a generation however I want. It's pretty common in the ancient world to do this, to leave out people that don't matter to what you're trying to say in order to make a point. So he's trying to show that Jesus is 777 times 2. He's just trying to show perfection. It's a numerology play, and that's most of what's going on here. When you're comparing this to my other slide, a black means conversions between Matthew and Luke. They both mention Abraham and Solomon. Italics means they diverge, and they're going to have different ancestors because they diverge. So one's going to trace it through Joseph, and one's going to trace it through Mary, basically. If it's in italics, it's an addition, but otherwise the lineage was what they agreed on. But one of them just added a name, okay? And then if I have it all caps like that, it means it's my assumption. So I want to show this. Matthew is tracing the lineage of Christ from Abraham to Joseph, while Luke is tracing the lineage from Mary back to Adam. Luke goes from Mary backwards, and Matthew goes from Abraham to Joseph. It's presumed that he's going to Mary because he just doesn't say, but it's clear from the way he kind of words it that that's what he's doing. So here's an example. Matthew's goal is to make it that all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David to the deportation to Babylon, 14. From the deportation to Babylon to Messiah, 14. So he omits a few names. Here's an example. Asa was the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat, the father of Joram. And Joram, the father of Uzziah. Matthew 1:8. First Chronicles 3:10 says, Asa, Jehoshaphat, Joram. Now we got between Joram and Jehoshaphat, it includes Uzziah, Joash, Amaziah, and then Uzziah. So it leaves out some of these names. Matthew does. It doesn't deny that they existed. He's making his 14, 14, 14 on purpose to carry this biblical numerology to his audience, to emphasize that how he's defining a generation is how he defines who's important within it, within a series. It depends on what the point of the author is. So that's how I'd explain that. Luke presents Christ's genealogy from Joseph back to Adam, but I'm going to put it in reverse order. So you can, if you wanted to, you can compare the two. That's the only reason. It's easier to see. So here again, this is a legend for how I've written it. So I have Mary because I'm supposing that's who it is. Here it ends with nothing. It ends by saying, Jesus being supposedly the son of Joseph. That's because Luke knows that he's not the son of Joseph because Mary's a virgin. So Luke didn't want to say son of Joseph because he's thinking Mary. That's why he ends it in Mary. So if he's thinking in Mary, it's her lineage, so she's going to have a subtle difference between her kid, her line, and Joseph. So the names are different because it's Mary. Because he said it's not Joseph. Jesus being supposedly the son of Joseph. It's how he ends it in Luke 3:23. So he's thinking Virgin Mary, as he said. She's the Virgin Mary. I can't say he's the son of Joseph. That's why he said supposedly. I hope you're getting that. So it's got to be Mary. And that's why half of it's off from this list. That's the main difference. Because they're going from a different parent. What would you expect? But both parents are from the tribe of Judah. Because they both go back to David. Luke's going to David from Mary. And David. He's the tribe of Judah. He's a king, right? And that's Matthew. They're both going through David. So he's the line of David. And this is what the Old Testament prophet said. A shoot will rise from Jesse. Jesse, the father of David. A shoot of a plant. A plant will rise from it. It's always talking about Jesus that way. Both of his parents come from David, especially his mom. It's got to be that way. So I just want to go over that. I'm not going to go into all the details otherwise right now, but that's important. Now, what's the point of Luke's account? Inasmuch as many of us has undertaken to compile an account of things as they were handed down to us by those from the very beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, it seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully. Luke was a doctor. From the beginning, I wanted to write it out for you in consecutive order. Most excellent Theophilus. He wrote it to a guy named Theophilus, like a Jew. Not a Jew, either a Greek or a Roman type person, but a Western type thinker. So Luke writes it to a Western mind so that you may know the exact truth about the things you've been taught. So he's going to try to keep it in consecutive chronologic order. This is his account, okay? I'm just going to kind of read through these accounts a little bit. In the days of Herod, king of Judah, just like Matthew said, right? We've already went through Matthew's account. He also said it was Herod, king of Judea. There was a priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. And he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. They were both righteous in the sight of God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and requirements of the Lord. But they did not have a child because Elizabeth was barren, and they're both advanced in years. Now it's happened while he was performing his priestly service before God in the appointed order of his division, according to the custom of the priestly office, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. So this is during his priestly service before God in the appointed order of his division, is when Elizabeth's about to become pregnant. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the altar of incense. Zacharias was troubled when he saw the angel, and fear gripped him. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zacharias, for your petition has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will give him the name John. You will have great joy and gladness, and he will drink no wine or liquor." Like this. Many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and he will drink no wine or liquor. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit while yet in his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the sons of Israel back to their Lord their God. It is he who will go as a forerunner before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, and the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. So he's kind of fulfilling the spirit of the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi, that prophesied that Elijah would return. So he's in the spirit of Elijah in this setting. Elijah still hasn't returned, but he will one day. But he's in the spirit of Elijah. He's going to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children. I think that means, back to their the way they're supposed to be, ancestral. So he's going to make them ready for the coming of the Messiah. So he's in the family. They're cousins. Zacharias said to the angel, "How will I know this for certain? For I am an old man and my wife is advanced in years." This is reminiscent of Abraham and Sarah, right? The angel answered and said to him, "I'm Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and bring you this good news. And behold, you shall be silent, unable to speak until the day when these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their proper time." So he gets made mute. When he came out of the temple, he was unable to speak. And they realized that he had seen a vision. He kept trying to make sign to them, but he couldn't say anything. So when the days of his priestly service were ended, he went back home. After these days, Elizabeth, his wife, became pregnant, and she kept herself in seclusion for 5 months, saying, "This is the way the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked with favor upon me to take away my disgrace among men." I want to address this. The course of Abijah was the 8th priestly course. I'm going to see if this works, because I want to show you something. I don't think I have it here. Ignore that one slide. I'll make it to it. Yeah. All right. Regarding this 8th priestly course, the division of Abijah, ultimately, rabbinic sources don't tell us how or if the priesthood compensated for an extra 4 weeks in their calendar every 3 years. We assume they must have, but without knowing the exact method they used, we're stuck as far as calculating the timing of the service of divisions. And after that, the entire priesthood was called to serve during each of the 3 pilgrim festivals, including Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And Lancaster says we can't rule out that it was during one of these festivals that Zacharias was serving. So if Zacharias was serving during Passover, it matches with my timeline I've already showed. If he was serving during Passover, if his 8th priestly course, if they took turns during Passover, all of them, and they did, the entire priesthood served. So if it was his day to do it, then it could have been during Passover. It just doesn't say. And also, experts don't agree on whether the priestly rotation began on Nisan 1 or Tishri 1. It becomes impossible to calculate when Zacharias served in the temple in Luke 1. And thus, the entire basis for calculating the birth of Messiah disintegrates like wet tissue paper. You cannot use the 8th course of Abijah to determine when Jesus was born. Because you can't say, the 8th course is this month, so he must have been born, there's 6 months difference between him and Elizabeth pregnancy, then it must have been then. You just add 6 months to whenever the Abijah was. It doesn't work that way. Unless it was Passover. And it could have been. And if it was Passover, then it does work with what I've shown. So I wanted to bring that out. Because I've had people bring it up to me. But there's debate. And when there's debate, the whole thing has to match. Everything has to line up. If you're going to have debate on one thing, what's going to make you flip one way or the other is going to be how everything else lines up. If you flip it the wrong way, nothing lines up. I promise you. So if you keep it the way I'm doing it, it all lines up. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee called Nazareth to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the descendants of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And coming in, he said to her, "Greetings to everyone. The Lord is with you." But she was very perplexed at this statement and kept pondering what kind of salutation this was. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus," which means salvation. "He will be great and be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. And he will reign," Father David through Mary, "and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. And his kingdom will have no end." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I am a virgin?" The angel answered and said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, it's not sexual. The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And for that reason, the Holy Child shall be called the Son of God. And behold, even your relative Elizabeth has also conceived a son in her old age. And she who was bearing is now in her 6th month." So around the time of the 6th month of Elizabeth, Mary gets pregnant. For nothing will be impossible with God. So behold, so if the 6th month is the 6th month of the religious calendar, then that would be Tishri. That would be her conceiving in Tishri. Because the religious calendar, Tishri's and Nisan's the religious and Tishri's the civil. Okay? They're 6 months apart, is the way it is in the calendar. They're 6 months apart. So if Elizabeth gets pregnant during the course of Abijah, that happens to be in Passover, you add 6 months to Passover, which is Nisan 14, the 6th month will be Tishri. And that's when I'm saying Jesus was conceived in 3 BC. So that would match doing it this way. It would also be the 6th month of her pregnancy as well. And behold, your relative Elizabeth has conceived a son in her old age, and he was called barren, is now in her 6th month. But in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee called Nazareth. I said that happened on August 31st. Almost, that's on our calendar. It was into September, pretty much. So that's pushing the 6th month then. So it is matching. It is matching. So I don't want to kind of belabor that point. Now at this time Mary arose and went in a hurry to the hill country, to a city of Judah, and entered the house of Zacharias and greeted Elizabeth. So Mary goes there. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb. The 6-month pregnant fetus of John the Baptist in the womb of Elizabeth leapt, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. And she cried out and said, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." So Mary, I'm saying, was conceived on Tishri 1, September 10th, 11th of 3 BC. And that's when she goes right then to hang out with her sister. Let's see. "And how has it happened to me that the mother of the Lord would come to me? For behold, when the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby leaped in my womb. Blessed is she who believed that there would be fulfillment of what has been spoken to her by the Lord." Mary said, "My soul exalts the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior. For he has had regard for the humble state of his bondslave. For behold, from this time on, all generations will count me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name, and his mercies upon generation after generation toward those who fear him. He has done mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who were proud in the thoughts of their heart. He has brought down rulers from their thrones." This is Mary's prayer. He's filled the hungry with good things. Mary stayed with her about 3 months and then returned home. Okay, so she stays there with her first trimester. So to review, Tishri 1, she gets pregnant in the 6th month of Elizabeth. Therefore, Elizabeth got pregnant in Nisan during Passover. Mary gets pregnant, goes and shows up, tells her all that happened, gets home by December because she stayed 3 months with her. Maybe the time of Hanukkah, because they did celebrate Hanukkah then. Jesus celebrated Hanukkah in the Gospels. They call it the Festival of Lights. Look it up. It's in the Gospels. So that's kind of what I'm saying there. Now the time had come for Elizabeth to give birth, and she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had displayed his great mercy toward her, and they were rejoicing. It happened that on the 8th day they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to call him Zacharias after his father. But his mother answered and said, "No, he's going to be called John." And they said to her, "There is no one among your relatives who's called by that name." And they made sign to his father as to what he wanted him called. And he asked for a tablet and wrote it as follows: "His name is John." And And they were all astonished. And at once his mouth was opened and his tongue loosed and began to speak in praise of God. Fear came on all those who were living around them, and all these matters were being talked about in the hill country of Judea. All who heard them kept them in mind, saying, "What then will this child turn out to be? For the hand of the Lord was certainly with him." Talking about John the Baptist. And his father Zacharias was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied, saying, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited us and accomplished redemption for his people, and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of David his servant. And he spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets from old, salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy toward our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he swore to Abraham, to grant us that we, being rescued from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, and holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, child," talking about John the Baptist, "will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare his ways, before the Lord, Lord, capital. That always means Yahweh. And now here the Lord is in flesh to prepare his ways, to give to his people the knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, with which the sunrise from on high will visit us, to shine upon those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet in the way of peace." And the child continued to grow and become strong in spirit. And he lived in the deserts until the day of his public appearance in Israel. Now, I'm going to Matthew. We kind of went over this already, but I want to go through some of this. The birth of Jesus was as follows. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child by the Holy Spirit. And Joseph, her husband, being a righteous man, did not want to disgrace her. He was going to put her away secretly, send her away. He was kind of like not believing. He didn't know yet. He thought she was impregnated. She's betrothed. She's not his wife yet. They're engaged. Whatever that idea would be, where they got kind of hooked but not married. And so there has been no sexual intercourse between them. Yet she ends up pregnant. So he's like, well, somebody did it. But when he had considered this, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him when he was thinking about sending her away privately. He was trying to protect her honor and not get her killed, but he still he wasn't going to marry her. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said in a dream, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit," meaning she's a virgin. "She will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." Now all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet in Isaiah. "Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which translated means God with us. Emmanuel. Emmanuel. He, the Son in the Old Testament, Isaiah, is God with us. God in the flesh. What else could it mean? "And Joseph awoke from his sleep and did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took Mary as his wife, and kept her a virgin until she became... Where am I going with this? Why am I saying until? I'm saying until because until means they did have sexual intercourse afterwards. The Catholic Church teaches that Mary was a perpetual virgin forever, but apparently Joseph did have sexual relations with his wife after she gave birth to Jesus and called his name Jesus. Said all this. Now I'm going to move on to Luke chapter 2. Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus. All right, this is the Caesar in charge. When I say he died, if you remember, it was August 14th. That's when Caesar Augustus, August of 14 AD, sorry. August of 14 AD, that's when Caesar Augustus died. And Tiberius Caesar took over. But Caesar Augustus is the one around. And a census of all the inhabited earth took place. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone was on his way to register for the census, each to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth through Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him, and was with child. While they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in clothes and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Now, we need to address this. I told you I'm doing all this tonight. Let me find what I'm looking for. probably a good time for me to take a break with my voice while I'm looking. I don't want to go over this. Census of Quirinius. All right. Okay. First of all, I'm going to address who Quirinius is in a second. Okay, but first, we're going to talk about the nature of the census. I believe, okay, if you've heard of Occam's razor states that basically the path of least resistance is probably the true path. So if you have to make a bunch of crazy assumptions, you're probably a conspiracy theorist and you're way over here in left field and you're nowhere near the truth. But if you're taking the logical things, it's probably where you need to be. So we know for a fact in 3 to 2 BC, there was this huge thing going on, a registration of allegiance to Caesar Augustus. And everyone in the Roman world was supposed to call him father of the country and acknowledge him as their Caesar. And it was a celebration. Augustus was already being called Pater Patriae on 1 or 2 inscriptions by 3 BC, according to this historian. In late 3 BC, he was offered the title by a deputation of people who met him at Antium. Here, this is historical references. This isn't just a historian. This is like the ancient historians. Though he refused it until the Senate bestowed it upon him in February of 2 BC. February of 2 BC, he is officially called Pater Patriae. All right? Father of the country. Okay. Now in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus, this guy, that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. The first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. The first. Meaning, why would he say first? There must be 2 or more. Looks like there's 2. Historically, only know of the second one. But it's just 1. It's the only one we know of. But Luke knew of more than 1. So Luke's not talking about the second one, which was in 6 and 7 AD, somewhere in there. He's talking about something that came before it that has been this Quirinius period. It's lost to history unless it's this. And I think it's this. Because in the process of, Luke, people may have perceived it as a census. Really, it was a swearing of allegiance, but you got to count the people that they're all doing it. So you get their names. Are you swearing allegiance? Are you swearing allegiance? Especially because we know there's this messianic fervor over there in the Judea. So we're going to make them swear allegiance, especially the ones that are of the king lineage of the kings over there, the tribe of Judah, people who trace their lineage back to David. They may want to be king one day, so they got to tell the Romans that no, you're the king, you're the father of the country, and so we're going to count you. But this really happened. So there was a census. It's just then. It's not in 5 BC or 6 BC or 4 BC. It's in this time. It's in 2 BC. People ignore this because they're stuck on Herod dying in 4 BC and they think it's got to happen prior to that. Like I'm saying, if you just go with the logical conclusions, then, okay, Josephus got one part wrong. We'll pick the part that matches the rest of it and use other historical reasons as well. Here's Augustus himself talking about this. While I was administering my 13th consulship, 2 BC, in the Senate and the equestrian order, and the entire Roman people gave me the title father of my country. It was a registration of allegiance to Caesar. So in that sense, it is a census, but it's beyond just a census. It's a census plus. Census plus. So you wouldn't think of it as only a census. It's like a whole big deal. But it was a big deal, and it really happened in 2 BC, when I'm saying Jesus was born. Not 3 BC. Some people want to put Jesus' birth in 3 BC. But this census wouldn't work. It's got to be in 2 BC for this census to work. Okay? Because it's this census in 2 BC, 13 consulship, out of his own mouth. So it's 2 BC. Throughout the year 2 BC, Augustus was being recognized as the one who brought peace, security, and tranquility to the world. And it may have taken a while to conduct, but it was going on in 2 BC, not 3 BC. So there's no reason for Mary and Joseph to go to Bethlehem in 3 BC. There's every bit of reason to go in 2 BC. And they got there by summer. Yeah, right? It just takes a while. There's undisputed evidence that Quirinius was governor beginning in 6 to 7 AD, and that he conducted a census at that time. Luke even references that census in Acts 5:37. Luke, the same writer that says this, first census, Luke wrote Luke and Acts. He wrote Acts and he wrote Luke in the 60s AD. He knows what he's talking about better than probably other people would. And Luke I just read you where Luke says, I'm carefully going through all this. He's a doctor, like I told you. So he says, this was the first, and this one was the second. This one was the second. All right? So was Quirinius around and governing back in the first sense? Was this guy Quirinius a governor of Syria at that time? So here's the thing. Tertullian said they took place when Saturnius, so Tertullian's an early church father, and he said the actual governor of Syria was Saturninus. Okay? That does match with 2 BC because his governorship began in 4 BC and went to 2 BC. But wait, Luke said Quirinius was governor. Well, not really. Luke actually uses the term hegemoneo, which means position of leadership. It's not really specific for being a governor. Justin Martyr says Quirinius is called the procurator in Judea. Okay? And that's not governor. So Luke uses a general term that just means leadership. You could call it governor because a governor is a type of leader. But if he was a procurator, Justin Martyr in the 2nd century said he was a leader that was a procurator. So he wasn't governor. So now, since the word that Luke used is general, and the word that Justin used is specific, and the specific word he uses is not governor, the word for governor is not what he uses, then Justin Martyr, the early church father, who can be an authority because he's writing so close, 2nd century is like the 300s AD. Really, no, it's like the 1st century is the 0 to 99. So it's the hundreds AD, hundreds, between 100 and 200 AD is the 2nd century. He's an authority here. So you can read this as when Quirinius was procurator of Syria. That's just the English. The English does not say governor, it should say procurator. It really just should say leader. And then Justin tells us the specific leader he was procurator. So a procurator was anyone that was working on behalf of a guy higher than him. So in this case, it would be Saturninus. Tertullian says Saturninus was governor of Syria, was the higher up in Syria, and Quirinius was working under him. So you have this big, huge census going on, this big thing where you got to orchestrate a bunch of people. Syria is right above Judea, so they needed help, obviously, to do this. And so Quirinius sends his guy, Saturninus sends his guy Quirinius down, and Quirinius administers the census. All right? He administers the census in that whole region, including Judea. That's what's going on. So this is a historical event. We have to piece it together. But what do we know? We know Saturninus was the actual governor. We know now that the word just means leader. The specific leader must have been procurator because Justin Martyr tells us that. Quirinius was the procurator. Therefore, he's helping out with this huge census, sent down to help out Judea, deal with all this. And then later, because he does such a good job, he becomes governor of Syria later on by 6-7 AD. That's when we know he was governor. That's when we know it. And he did another census then because he was so good at censuses. So that's how I'd kind of look at it. All right. That explains the census of Quirinius in my mind. All right? In a lot of ways. You got this father of the country thing going on to explain it. You just got to have the death of Herod in 1 BC. Then everything else lines up. But when you put it in 4 BC, I swear to God, it's almost deliberate on the part of scholars to mess it up. That's what I think is really going on. I don't think it's like conscious. I just think it's subconscious. They just can't help to do it. I'm just going to show these slides. I think I've made my point on this. Yeah, that's what I want to do now. So I covered the Census of Quirinius. I covered Herod being born in 1 BC. I'm showing how it all lines up to 2 BC as the birth, and it can't be 3 BC. Jesus has to be born in 2 BC. No doubt about it. And I've shown how John the Baptist is not an issue. So I'm knocking out everything. That's what I'm trying to do today. This is what I was talking about. I have multiple places I put these slides. Now we're just going to keep going to the Christmas story. In the same region, there were some shepherds staying out in the fields and keeping watch over their flock by night. Angel of the Lord suddenly stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were terribly frightened. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy, which will be for all the people." I was checking something there. Where was I? Which will be for all the people. "For today in the city of David will be born to you a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there appeared with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased." When the angels had gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds began saying to one another, "Let us go to Bethlehem and see this thing that's happened." Notice he came to common men, right? He wasn't going to the big guys. He's going to Magi. The guys this is an important point. The first people to recognize what was going on before anybody recognized, before Jesus was even born, when they were following the star, Jupiter, when they were following that, were Gentiles. Because the gospel was going to go to the Gentiles because the Jews rejected. That was going on from the beginning. So they came in a hurry, and they found their way to Mary and Joseph and the baby as he lay in the manger. When they had seen this, they made known the statement which had been told them about this child. And all who heard it wondered at the things which were told by the shepherds. So the time of the birth of Jesus did happen. The shepherds were the ones that showed up, yes, but the wise men did not get there for at least 6 months or so. That's the shepherd part. And when 8 days had passed before his circumcision, his name was then called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of their purification, according to the laws of Moses, were completed, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. And to offer sacrifice, according to what was said to the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, looking for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple, in the Holy Spirit. And when parents brought in the child Jesus to carry out for him the custom of the law, then he took him into his arms and blessed God and said, "Now, Lord, you are releasing your bondservant to depart in peace." Simeon finally saw the Messiah, and he believed it. "According to your word, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all people, a light of revelation to the Gentiles." Who's the first person that saw him? Gentiles, Magi, who picked up on it first. I didn't see him first, but they picked up on it first. "And the glory of your people Israel." And his father and mother were amazed at these things which were being said about him. And Simeon blessed him and said to Mary his mother, "Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and for a sign to be opposed, and a sword will pierce even your own soul, to the end that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed." Isn't that what he does? So Jesus, every religion has to deal with him. And they sometimes deal with him inappropriately. But he pierces their soul. And he's going to cause the fall and rise of many. And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years and had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage. And then as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, serving night and day with fastings and prayers. At that very moment, she came up and began giving thanks to God and continued to speak of him to all those who were looking for the redemption of Jerusalem. And then we get into the story we've already gone over. I don't know, we went over this. Out of Egypt, he had to go to Egypt because there's a prophecy in Hosea. Out of Egypt, I called my son. A voice heard in Ramah. This is the killing of all the innocents. When we talked about that. A voice heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children. Refused to be comforted because they were no more. Okay. I've said all that. I've covered most of my slides. Yeah. So I'm going to do one last thing. It's going to be controversial. If you're... I have to bring it up because this story is there's pieces of this in the Quran as well, and I want to show it for what it is. I'm just compelled to do it. Hold on. Okay. So the Quran agrees with the Gospels that Jesus was born of a virgin. I'm going to go over that here. So Surah 19 says, mention of Mary in the book, when she had withdrawn from her people to a chamber looking east, and she had chosen seclusion from them. Then we sent our spirit, this is like the royal we, for Allah, sent our spirit to her, and it assumed for her the likeness of a perfect man. In Islam, the spirit is not the Holy Spirit like in the Gospels. It is the angel Gabriel, or Jibril. She said, indeed, I seek refuge in Ar-Rahman. That means, that's a title for Allah, most beneficent, the compassionate. I seek refuge in the most compassionate, if you fear Allah. So, she sees, I'm just going to tell you what the Quran's saying. It's saying that Allah sent the Gabriel to Mary, and this incorporeal spirit of an angel assumed a corporal form of a man. Perfect man just means he's a man in every way. As far as she's concerned, that's a man standing in front of me. Out of nowhere, in my house. And her natural reaction is, I'm going to get raped. And so she's like, I seek refuge in God. If you fear Allah, please you too. Like, don't do anything to me. You need to fear God. And he said, I'm only a messenger of your Lord, so I may bestow on you a holy son. Holy son? She said, how can I have a son when no mortal has touched me, nor have I been unchaste? He said, so it will be. Your Lord says, it is easy for me. And so that way we make him a sign for mankind and a mercy from us. It is a thing that is ordained. A true why is not there. Like in Christianity, the virgin birth is absolutely necessary because you can't have the mixture of it's got to be more than just human. So if you're going to carry God in the flesh has to get there, not through sperm meeting egg. So that's why you have to have virgin birth. To carry that over into the Quran, but leave out that part is to start to not make sense. Is why include it that she's virgin? Why do that? The other reason he mentions his holy son. So like Jesus had to be perfect, but if he's just a man, why is that put on him by the Quran if he's supposed to be holy? And if there's any imperfection in him, like any man would have, then the virgin birth is pointless. It didn't accomplish its point. Its purpose. If its purpose is to protect against sin, and its purpose is to provide a means by which there's God in him and man in him simultaneously, that's why there's a virgin birth in the scripture, as predicted in Isaiah 7. All right, so keep on going here. In Surah 19, 23 to 26, she goes into labor by herself. There's no shepherds. There's no Joseph. There's no manger. It's just by herself. And she gets hungry and thirsty after she gives birth. She gives birth under a palm tree. So this 19:16 through 22. Then 23 to 26 talks about her giving birth under a palm tree. And then she gets hungry and thirsty after giving birth. The infant Jesus talks to her saying, "Do not grieve." It says from beneath her, he talked. So this is like the newborn Jesus Christ talks to her. Speech comes out of his mouth. A newborn. "Do not grieve. Your Lord has placed a stream beneath you, and shake the trunk of the palm tree toward you. You will cause ripe dates to fall upon you." So it's a date tree. Okay. I'm going to tell you there's a source to this in a minute. And it's not just pulled out of the air. There's a source to it. But it's not the Gospels. She then returns to her people in Surah 19:28, and they call her, "O sister of Aaron." And so this happens more than once. And the more times it happens, the more it's pretty clear in the Quran that there's a confusion between Miriam, the sister of Aaron, and Moses. That's who we're talking about when we say sister of Aaron. And Miriam, the mother of Jesus. Okay? Those two are separated by 1,500 years in time. But they're confused constantly in the Quran. Even if it means sister or as a descendant of, which there's other Quran verses that seem to, that's not the meaning. But if it was to mean sister as descendant of here, that didn't work either, because Mary's, like I told you a bunch of times, she's from the tribe of Judah, and Moses and his sister Miriam and Aaron and brother Aaron were from the tribe of Levi, because Aaron was the first priest, and his brother, so they're from the tribe of Levi. So they're not even sisters that way. So again, in the same chapter, in Surah 19, or 29 through 30, they said, the unbelievers, they're not believing that Jesus is they're not believing in the prophethood of Jesus here in this part. And they're like, and she points to Jesus in the Quran. She points to him. Like, ask him. And they go, how can we talk to one who's in the cradle, a young boy? So he's obviously of an age where you can't talk yet. And he spoke, "Indeed, I am the slave of Allah. He has given me the book and appointed me a prophet." So again, you have the talking Jesus first under a palm tree at his physical birth with, he just got born. He's talking. And then a little bit later, he's talking before he's of age to talk. So there's this thing called the pseudo-gospel of Matthew that was, at least early form of it, was probably in the early 600s AD, at which time Muhammad was coming along as well. This story that is found in the pseudo-gospel of Matthew was probably the source material for this. And the pseudo-gospel of Matthew, this interaction happened when Mary and Joseph had to flee to Egypt at the time of Herod. It's just a made-up story, written by some Christian or somebody along those lines wrote it, came up with this. And they're trying to go over things that could have happened. Back then, people like to fill in the blanks, okay? So when they were escaping to Egypt, they're like, what if this happened? And so this is like a miracle that's going to happen. During the flight to Egypt, Mary, Joseph, and the infant Jesus stopped to rest in the desert heat. Mary admired a palm tree laden with fruit, but couldn't reach it, expressing a desire for some. And that's what happens here. "Do not grieve, your Lord has placed a stream beneath you, and they shake the trunk of the palm tree," because she's thirsty. The Quran has it happening at his birth. The actual pseudo-gospel of Matthew, which is the source material, has it happening on the trip to Egypt a little bit later. So Mary admired a palm tree later with the fruit, but couldn't reach it. The Christ child from Mary's lap, and over here, I didn't put clear in there, but it says from beneath her in the Quran, expressed a desire for some. So anyway, from Mary's lap, Jesus spoke to the palm tree. In this story, it obeys him. Like when Jesus was adult and he was on the waters, and he told, "Peace, be still," and then the whole storm stopped. This is like a made-up story in light of that, trying to say he did it as a child too. And so, like he's some kind of wandering magician or something, which is not the point in the Gospels. And Christ only did that stuff during his ministry, from 30 to 33. Only during that period he did those things. I don't think he's walking around doing miracles his whole life. But the palm tree obeyed, bending down so they could gather fruit and drink from a nearby spring. This whole thing is very familiar, right? one came from the other. I think this came from that because a little bit earlier than when this would have been written in the Quran. So in Surah 19, Bud does put this in the context of Mary withdrawing with him to a far place. To a far place. That's Egypt. So he kind of conflates and then loses it, or it's got him being born on her way to Egypt, which doesn't really make sense. Everything's kind of out of place. But I just want you to see it's there. This stuff's in there. What about this talking from the cradle? That actually comes from the late 2nd to early 3rd century, the infancy Gospel of Thomas, which is 400 years before the Quran. In the infancy Gospel of Thomas, it's a Gnostic gospel that the Gnostics like to call Jesus the Logos. And it was written more than 100 years probably after the original 4 Gospels. So it's a pseudo-epigrapha. That means Thomas didn't write it. But these guys wrote these Gnostic Gospels and we're going to put guys' names on it from the past to make it sound legit. That's what Disney does with Star Wars. They make some dumb show that they say, this is Star Wars, we're putting Star Wars name on it. But guys like me that know the original Star Wars, that ain't Star Wars. You can put Star Wars all over it. You can put Gospel of Thomas all over something that's a piece of crap. But that's what it is. So you got the infancy Gospel of Thomas that was not written any earlier than the late 2nd century. He has said that Jesus spoke, and indeed, when he was lying in his cradle, said to Mary, his mother, I am Jesus, the Son of God, the Logos, whom thou hast brought forth as the angel Gabriel announced to thee, and my Father has sent me for the salvation of the world. So this idea of Jesus talking from a cradle is not sourced in the Gospel, but it's sourced in the Gnostic Gospels, which are bunk. That wasn't written by anyone that's a prophet, yet it appears in the Quran. So the source material is off. It's off. This is my question to the Quran. What's the significance of the virgin birth if you deny the incarnation, and if you really ultimately have to deny the sinless perfection of Jesus because you say he's just a man? So you kind of misses the point of the virgin birth. But by having the virgin birth, it inadvertently admits to both the deity and the sinless perfection of Jesus without knowing it. Now this is crazy, but it's so interesting. I have to say it. There's this guy that I pick up on the internet sometimes. He's quoting the Proto-Evangelium of James and trying to say that Mary was 12 years old when she had Jesus. It sparked me because it's a complete misreading of it, but it gets into this other cool, crazy stuff with how they thought sex happened back then. So how they thought babies were conceived through sexual intercourse, but how conception happened. So thank you, Daniel Hikikachu, for doing this. He quotes the Proto-Evangelium of James and says that she was 12. Well, the actual thing that happened was this account from the Proto-Evangelium of James, which is another 2nd, 3rd century Gnostic gospel. Same, I'm not surprised that these guys like to quote this stuff because it's what the Quran constantly quotes. And their parents so the account claims that Mary was placed in the service of the temple at a young age. Over time, then when she reached ages 12, almost think of Samuel. Same idea in the Old Testament. It was this Proto-Evangelium makes Mary a form of the new Samuel. And she's in the temple until she gets to age 12. When she reached age 12, they're afraid she's going to start menstruating. And they feel like they got to get her out. When she was 12 years old, there was held a council of the priests saying, behold, Mary has reached the age of 12 in the temple of the Lord. What then shall we do with her? Lest perchance she defile the sanctuary of the Lord, meaning she go into menarche. She starts menstruating. And that's always defiles the holy stuff. That's in the Mosaic Law. So it's time for her to go, is what they're saying. So they did this whole process where they draw lots and stuff, and Joseph it came to Joseph. He draws something like a rod, and then out of the rod comes like a dove in this story. And they say, "Oh, you're the guy." In this story, Joseph is old. He's an older man, and he's a carpenter, because it says he's got to go off and build stuff. So he's like, he don't want her, first of all, in this story from the Proto-Evangelium of James. And like the priest said to Joseph, "You have been chosen by lot to take into your keeping the virgin of the Lord," the virgin. Okay, she's still a virgin, but she may be hitting menstruation. After he takes her home. Joseph said to Mary, "Behold, I have received you from the temple of the Lord, and now I must leave you in my house, and I got to go away and build my buildings." Much later, the reason to know is because verse 12 of this whole thing, which is, I didn't put the verses because it doesn't really matter. Not really. It occurs before this. Says she was 16 years old when the mysteries began happening. And the mysteries it was discussing particularly was the Elizabeth and Zechariah and all that stuff. The whole thing with Elizabeth that we just read. They're saying she was 16. So the Proto-Evangelium wants Mary to be 16. Not freaking 12 like this guy said. He didn't even read it. He just wants her young. Because he wants to disparage her for some reason. I don't know what this guy's trying to do half the time. But he makes a fool of himself. And he calls himself a scholar. But he can't even read the source material. But, here it says she was 16 years old when this was happening. And she became in her 6th month. And Joseph comes home from his building, enters the house, and now she's big with child. And he smote his face, withdrew himself on the ground, put on sackcloth, wept bitterly, and said, "What's going on here? Somebody did something to her. Who is this that has hunted me down? Who has done this evil thing in my house and defiled the virgin?" So he hadn't done anything with her yet. He left her. And then she's suddenly pregnant. And he's kind of mad. So that's the made-up story from the Proto-Evangelium of James about this whole thing. Or it's trying to explain why Joseph was not around later in life because he was old. It's trying to provide, arbitrary explanations for things that aren't fully worked out in the Scripture. So that's that story. Now, as I've done research here, some things came out that I'm going to go over. So I told you here that she was kind of worried that the appearance of Gabriel might mean something bad's going to happen to her. You go to Surah 66:12, and it provides a little more light. Again, it confuses the two Marys. Mary, the daughter of Imran. Imran is the Arabic name for Amram. And in Exodus, Amram's the father of Moses and Miriam, and Aaron. So it confuses this guy with this Mary. So it did it again. So it seemed like that was the understanding. But, that culture didn't differentiate time the same way we do, so it combined them. It just did. So it says here, Mary, the daughter of Imran, who guarded her private parts, we breathe therein of our spirit. And it's referencing, in that part, it's referencing her getting pregnant. So this stuff is very interesting. That word private part is the literal word for vagina. Okay? That's why it's written that way. It says, we breathe therein of our spirit, but yet our spirit was this. The perfect man, Gabriel. Gabriel appearing as a perfect man. That's who it is. So he's in fleshly form and has to breathe into her private parts. That's exactly what it says. And I'm not going to make up anything I'm going to tell you, because an explanation arises from both. There's slight reference to it in the Hadith and more reference to it among the tafsir, which is the Islamic scholarship on these things. So the issue is you have the Gabriel providing life to a pregnancy. But they don't want there to be as a thought as this thing that gets born is half angel. They want to make it clear this is not half angel. This is a fully man, because he's a man like everybody else. And so the commentators on the Quran says over the history of Islam said we can't let it be thought that because of these two verses, breathe there in our spirit, and then over back here that it was the man version of Gabriel doing it. We can't make you think that there was some sort of like angelic sperm or whatever is going on here. So here's our explanation. You have to understand something first. Hippocrates, Plato, Diocles, the Egyptian papyrus, everybody in the ancient world thought that the male semen came from the brain and spinal cord and the spine. Everybody thought that. They thought that semen flows from the brain and spinal cord. It is why they worship bulls because of that. Because they thought they made the connection between the large phallus of bulls, and they thought it went up into the spine. And bulls were always associated with sexual prowess, and they worshipped Baal and Zeus, and they associated them with bulls in both cases. When Moses came down the mountain, what were they worshiping? A calf, which is like a form of a bull. They were worshiping probably a young male bull that they made out of gold. That was all worshiping this Baal stuff, which they associated with sexual prowess, the way it was. And they associated that with, they said that the sperm comes out of the semen, the fluid comes out of the spinal cord and brain. So that's how everybody thought back then, just the way they thought. And they thought that fluid mixed with women's womb fluid, and that mixture created conception. That's what they all thought, okay? Which is why they thought the brain and spinal cord were meaningless. So if you look at what they did in Egypt when they preserved the kings in their pyramids, they would throw out the brain material, throw it out, and they would keep the soul material, which they thought was the kidneys and the spleen and the intestines and all that. They put all that in jars, and then they kept the jars inside the tomb. And they said that was going to help them move on to the afterlife, because they thought the spirit and soul was in the abdomen. That's what they thought. And they thought the brain was a sex organ. And they thought that was useless in the afterlife. So why leave it? This idea that man's discharge, and there's both a male and woman discharge that has to do with creating traits in the offspring. That's what the issue going on here in the Hadith is. They said they understood that the man and the female discharge has something to do with creating the way that the offspring looks. That's all I'm showing there. But that idea was even prevalent then. And the Quran directly affirms this by saying, let man consider from what he is created. He is created from a gushing fluid proceeding from between the backbone and the ribs. Okay? The Quran, in Surah 86, 5 through 7 and 13, here, states unequivocally that semen comes from between the backbone and the ribs. So, because it comes from the eternal speech of Allah, that's kind of a problem, in my opinion. Because he should know that that's not true. But anyway, they bring it all together. This tafsir said Allah gave the true miracles with Mary in the Quran, not with Jesus, is my whole point. Allah gave Maryam both fluids. She was a special. Like women don't have the semen thing from the spine. That's just a man thing. But Allah gave Maryam both, some in her womb and some in her spine. Jibril breathed into her. I didn't write this. This is from this guy. Gabriel breathed into her to stimulate her desire, because as long as this I got to look it up, because I was typing it from the internet. Does not have her desire. She does not become pregnant. As long as women, that's probably women, a woman does not have her desire ignited, she does not become pregnant. When that happened by Jibril's breath, the fluid in her spine descended into her womb, and the two fluids mixed, and the fetus was attached. That is why Allah then says when he decides on something, meaning when he wants to create something. So this guy, this Islamic scholar, says what's all going on here is to make it so that what is born is all male, is all a man, and there's no angel involved and no God involved. What I have to do is get her stimulated by this man, Gabriel, showing up in her room. The spirit of Gabriel is turned into a physical man. He breathes into the area here to stimulate her, okay? Like it said elsewhere in the Quran there. He breathed into her to stimulate her, and then she then releases some semen from her spine, which was there miraculously, because only men have that, and some semen from her womb. Those two fluids mix internally and create a fully man, but yet through a virgin. That's what's going on there. So I think that is just incredibly interesting that the Quranic view of this is so different and somewhat similar. There's similarities and then there's incredible differences with what's going on between the two accounts. And this is all because it includes the virgin birth, but then tries every which way to avoid what it implies. And I think that's worth talking about. And at the end of the day, I bring all this up because it's scholarly and it's like, this is the way these things are. I want all the truth out there. I want everything that's said on the subject in front of us. But in the, there's just certain realities to where things come from, what they mean, what the source material is, and what to do with the history. And if we all are at least looking at it, as from both the historical and spiritual, and we try to say, here's how it all comes together. That's what we're doing today. At the end of the day, it's an apologetic to kind of show that, what the Bible has to say about Christ is the truth, and time will tell us over time that that's the case. Those are like the slides I've put together over the years on this subject matter, and I'm going to keep going after it. And every year I'm going to add something a little bit because I don't have it all together yet. So I think I'm going to leave it at that tonight. I'm going to stop here. If it lets me. Oh, yeah. Okay.